NFL Week 1. The wait is over. I'm pumped up, and so is Adam Traeger. Guys, welcome in. Good morning. We are excited. The first NFL Sunday of the year, not preseason. NFL Week 1 regular season. Trig, how are you, man?
I'm good, man. It's great to have NFL back, but it's always like such a grind. I was up watching the end of Texas Tech, Washington State last night, and then I like back up at like 5 a.m. this morning because these games start early. So, but yeah, I wouldn't want to have it like a different way where we didn't have the games. So, looking forward to it. I didn't play. McInnis, I didn't play either of the Thursday or Friday night games. So first NFL bet of the regular season for me. I did go 3-2 in the preseason. But yeah, looking forward to that. I've made 2 bets so far today. They're on my page at Wager Talk. I might add a third. I don't know. Like, what's your take? Like, I think week 1 is very difficult. I think it gets more difficult as the years go on. Like, these teams show less and less in the preseason.
Yeah.
We dwindled preseason down to 3 weeks from 4, and now it almost feels like a lot of teams will play their starters once, maybe twice, and then they call it a day. So I found it a little bit more challenging to get a really good gauge on a team based on what you're seeing on the field now than maybe like, let's say 10 years ago when you used to pretty much know that like one of those preseason games, the starters were going to like play into the third quarter. And it was going to be it was almost going to feel like a regular season game. So still more guesswork in my opinion, but I've got a couple angles I like today.
All right. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. We'll get a few picks, sides, totals, whatever anybody in the comments wants to hear, and you and I can give out a few picks. Maybe I was thinking, Trig, maybe we can try and give the people something in the early slate, something in the 4:00 slate, and kind of a little bit of everything.
Yep.
But yeah, I think it's interesting because you hear a lot of people talk about like when these numbers first open up, right? It's all about the numbers, and these numbers have been out there for so long. So it's not like week 2 overreaction week, right? It's not like week 3. It's like you're basing a lot on, you said preseason, training camp reports, and also last year, like, I do a lot of props, and when I'm doing my analysis for my prop bets, a lot of it is in 2023, this team did so on and so forth in 2023, because that's what we're basing it on right now. It's week 1, so a lot of the stuff we're betting is based on what we think the team did in 2023, and they're going to do as well. Like a prop that I just sent out that I did a video on last night was Baker Mayfield over 21.5 completions. And what I like about Baker is, he's not the guy that's going to air the ball out all the time. He'll do it, but he's the king of the dump offs. He's a guy that I have on a list, literally, of completions and attempt type of guys, because he has no issue. He has no ego with just tossing the ball 4 or 5 yards to a running back or to a guy really close to him. And Washington's secondary was brutal last year. They were near the bottom in a lot of defensive categories. And he closed out the year going over 21.5 in 5 of his last 6 games. But again, this is based on last year. What I know about Baker, what I know about the Bucs, what I know about Washington's defense. But a lot of this week 1 stuff is based on last season. We got to give a shout out to Rob. Rob, I went to visit Rob actually this summer, Trig, to go see a CFL game. He hosted us. It was a really fun time. Loves the NFL as well. So Rob, enjoyed the games today. We got Sniper KD,
Dude,
Falcons versus
that's
Steelers.
Awesome. McInnis, I got to get up one. I want to go to a CFL game sometime. It looks like a blast. And actually, I think I'm only about 3 hours from Ottawa's stadium. So maybe that's the play for me.
And you know what? They're good now. They're really good now. Yeah. They're actually driving me crazy this year, I'll be honest. But if you took away my record in the CFL season in games involving Ottawa, and then every other game, I'd be having like a 70% season. I swear to God, I'm just getting wrecked. And whenever I fade this team, it's bad.
No, and it just goes to like, I used to bet the CFL. I don't anymore. And it's like something that you and I have talked off air. Like there's only so much time in the day. I really think that it's like, I really think the term jack of all trades, master of none applies to like sports handicapping. Like it's just, I'm too deep into Major League Baseball to also do the CFL, right? It's just like that's kind of like why this year for college football, I'm really only paying attention to two conferences, the ACC and the MAC, because they're kind of my geographic conferences. They're the conferences I have like most of my contacts in, so on and so forth. And it's like, it sucks because, you know, I feel like I lose track of like the CFL, but I used to be a fan, and I would love to take a ride up, get to a game. I think Hamilton's relatively close to me too. I'm in central New York. I know it takes me 3 hours to get to the Senators Arena, so I'm assuming it's close to yeah. But yeah, I'll have to come.
Yeah, you can go to Hamilton. You know what? Honestly, if you ever did it, we've talked about it before. I think you might as well go all in if you're going to do it. I think you might as well go to 2 games in one trip.
Sure.
Like that would be possible. You know, I know.
Toronto,
I know you like
Toronto's got a
right?
team.
So.
Toronto's got a team too. So Toronto, I think I could make any of those East Coast. Toronto's like 4 hours. Montreal's 3 or 4. Ottawa's like 3. Hamilton's probably the same. So I could probably get to that whole half. But now that we got people, I noticed people filing in, so I don't want to keep them waiting. And I wanted to go back to your point about Baker. About Baker Mayfield, because I did a video on this game earlier this week, just out on YouTube, Wager Talk YouTube channel. And I guess I maybe like, I'm going to backtread my like handicap a little bit. So this is not going to make my card. I really thought I was going to be on the Commanders in this game. My video was a pick on the Commanders plus 3.5. I think it's still the way I would bet it. But what you have referenced is kind of my concern. It's going to be all about, can the offensive line hold up and sort of absorb the pressure of the Commanders' pass rush. If they can, Baker will probably have a pretty good game. If they can't, then the Bucs might be in trouble. I don't know if Freddie's going to make it, but I know he said he might join at some point. Okay. He made a really good point on Spaces earlier this week that I thought was like, something that deserves being brought up. The Bucs were in 3rd and long more than any other team, or I'm sorry, they were successful in 3rd and long more than any other team in the league last year. And one has to wonder how much of that was Canales, who's of course now the head coach of the Panthers. So, I kind of was going to go in with that angle, but I'm not super confident in the Commanders just yet.
Yeah.
The
QB room. What do you think about that? Like, overall, do you trust
that's the thing. Like,
backing a young guy like that?
Yes and no. Like, I think he's got upside, but I don't know. First game's always tough. Yeah. You could say the same thing for Caleb Williams, but I also don't think that this is I don't think this is the easiest opponent for Daniels, because defensively the Bucs have been pretty good at containing like the running type quarterbacks. So they're definitely like, the one thing the Bucs will do, I'll tell you right now, they will keep Daniels back there and force him to make, like, throw the ball to make plays. He's not running all over that defense. So then you have to say, like, how much do you trust this guy? Like, the preseason's one thing when there's backup defensive players out there and, it's broken plays here and there, but like, this is the real thing now. How much do you trust him throwing into an NFL defense for 60 minutes for the first time? That's the thing,
right?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's the thing.
So I kind of backed off this one. I leaned Commanders. I backed off.
And just for my perspective from the play I was talking about, Trig, one thing I'll mention about the completions prop, your team doesn't have to win, let alone cover. That's the best part about those, is that sometimes I actually bet those completion props on teams that I think actually might lose the game. Like, who's been one of my I'll tell you what, my top 2 completion guys past 2 years, no joke. You want to know who one of my favorite guys for it was? Mac Jones. Yeah. Because that guy can't throw longer than 20 yards. At least on the Patriots, he wasn't. Right? So if it takes you, because who goes under his completions a lot and his attempts? Patrick Mahomes. Because he needs only 3 passes to get down the field. Right?
Oh, yeah. There's absolutely, like, I almost feel like usually with overs, Like if you're handicapping overs and whatnot, you'd obviously like prefer a game that's a blowout, right? Like I talked about it. Yes, I did a video earlier this week for a college football game. I did NC State, Tennessee, and I said, this one's probably going to get there in garbage time because Tennessee is likely to be up big, and like NC State did literally nothing all game offensively, and then once it got out of hand, scored a touchdown in the third quarter, and it ended up getting there in a game that had no business going over it. So it landed 61. The total was 60 or 60 and a half. And it got there based on that lopsidedness. Now, NFL, I don't think you get that as much, or it's a little bit harder to like kind of figure out what games are going to be the blowouts, I think. But yeah, no doubt about it. If you got a team that's like typically playing from behind, usually their quarterback is as long as they're not going to like run themselves out of the game and get benched, or like, if it's someone they're going to stick with, usually it's a play for stuff like that. I would agree. And Baker's not getting pulled out of this game. So
yeah. And that's why it sucks for people that have running backs on bad teams, because if they're down 14 points, that team's not going to run the ball. So Trig, we could go in order. We could,
I want to hit like the stuff. Like, I think the next one we should talk about is Falcons Steelers. So I definitely want to like go and hit whatever people want in the chat.
For sure.
So someone in the chat said, I hear Fields is starting. I had a little my info stream that I kind of have going on my phone constantly said Wilson was out on the field warming up first. I don't know what you take of that. Like, I also like, does it, I guess my first thing is, does it matter that much? Like, I kind of slightly lean toward the Steelers here at the number. But I wouldn't make it like a huge difference between which of these guys starts. Like, that's just me. Like, I think I'd be willing to like roll with either of them. So, but again, this was also a game I kind of got away from pretty quickly. So I never really circled back to get the specifics because I kind of ruled this one out. I just decided I like the Falcons enough. Actually, I should rephrase that. I have enough reservations with the Steelers where I didn't want to go against a Falcons team that, even though they're kind of hyped up, I do think will be pretty good or has a chance to be pretty good. So I'm kind of circling back with you. This was one I kind of ruled out a couple days ago and never circled back on. So I guess we can all find out together here.
Yeah, I mean, I just think that I think this is a game we kind of have questions about both teams a little bit, right? I mean, I also am seeing a lot of people really liking the Falcons going into this year. I've seen a lot of hate on the Steelers now, right? And it's
for sure.
And that kind of makes you feel a little bit weird about it. It seems like a lot of people like this Falcon spot here. I actually kind of like the under in this game, and I've seen some people saying about points potentially in this one, and I get it. Different quarterback now. The Falcons might have someone that can make plays, but to me, last year their defense was still pretty good, respectable, and they've had a horrible quarterback situation on and off for years. It feels like, and I feel like their play style is still going to be really simplistic. I can't see them, creating a lot of like really highlight reel plays today. They're going to be very simple, very basic. And on the other side, I just don't think they got enough playmakers over there, man, for the Steelers. So I know that might sound a little bit crazy, but who are their running backs? Let's be real here. Do they have any solid backs, this Steelers team? I don't really think so. This game to me could be actually kind of a boring game. So yeah, I lean towards the under, actually.
So do I. I actually fully 100% agree. I think this could be a 17, 13, 20 to 17 type game. I under makes a ton of sense. I don't think the Falcons are going to just like open up the playbook in this game. I do think that offense should be like, it should be a lot more dynamic than it with the skill players that they have. Like, I think you'll see that become a more dynamic offense as time goes on, but I don't think they really, I don't think they really need to open it up on the Steelers, to be honest with you. Like, I can kind of see them just like, grinding this one out. But that's the other reason I thought that 4 was like probably a little much. If you forced me, if you know, and the other thing I wanted to go back to one point you made, the Falcons defense is much better than it was like let's say 2 years ago. So
Mhm.
I know in the offseason they got Judon, who was kind of like their big like offseason acquisition. But even last year, suddenly the Falcons had a pass rush. Like if you go back a couple seasons, they used to have they generated zero pressure on the quarterback. Now they're they had a pretty solid pass rush last year that I think continues to improve this year. So Steelers have issues on their offensive line. So yeah, I kind of feel like the under makes sense here.
Like,
Slight
let's be real
slight
here.
lean Steelers under my
Not a game you want on your TV. If you're cracking some beers with your boys, or if you're going out, you don't want that to be your Sunday night football game. That's for sure. I mean, you don't want that to be your primetime game. Sniper KD says W on reviewing the people's comments and picks. Yeah, for sure. That's why we're here. Good morning, everybody.
What's up, Ski? I see him.
Yeah, we got
chiming
Ski in the
down
house.
there.
Robert says if the Steelers do not get turnovers early, this one could be a rout. Yeah, and you know what's funny? They are kind of a team that like they need their defense to make
We should.
plays.
I think Freddie's around. We should see if we can loop Freddie, and he is like the Steelers guy. Like he would
Okay.
have the.
You want me? I can send you the link.
Yeah. Send me the link. I'll send it to him because I'd love to get his like thoughts here on the Steelers. No one I know follows that team closer than Freddie Mills, who's a brilliant handicapper regardless. But he's the one that we should be referring to on Steelers. Steelers
Actually,
football.
I already sent you the link, so you can send it to him.
Yeah.
Same thing. What's up, Ski? Ski, if you want to hop on too, Ski, feel free to join us.
In the meantime, though, while I'm gonna send Freddie the link, but in the meantime, I want to address the he said Taysom Hill. So I do like the Panthers today, and I do think that Carr is gonna have to check it down a ton because that offensive line has some real issues. So I don't think that that's a bad look at all. Targeting someone like Taysom Hill, and I also think Kamara could potentially the check. I don't know that the checkdowns are going to come to Kamara because again, I think the blocking is going to be a little bit of a mess for the Saints. So if the Saints are going to have any offensive success in this game, it's probably going to be like 5-6 yard gains to the tight end, unless they can somehow get Olave downfield to make like spectacular plays one-on-one. I don't think the Saints are going to have a bunch of downfield success because that offensive line is in a tough spot right now. So I actually agree with Ski. I think the best. And then again, Freiermuth, we'll let Freddie comment on him and as far as the game plan is concerned. But I don't hate Hill at all because he gets the looks near the red zone. They can potentially utilize him in like a gadget style thing. But I actually think if he gets one, it's probably going to be like off of where he just kind of leaks out as the tight end and gets a touchdown that way. So I don't hate that at all, Ski. I think that's a good look.
I don't mind that plus 350 at all. I'm just kind of going through right now. Actually, let's see if I can share this, Trig. We won't do it for long, so I'm not sure how it's going to look, but let's see if I can share this. Let me know if you got it.
Yeah.
All right, cool. So so this is receptions here, but look at this. This is Freiermuth, his targets. We got 8, 2, 4, 4, 7, 5, 11, 4, 4. The number is 3.5 here for this one. So red zone targets, minimal there. So Trig, to me, this is a perfect example. This is why I wanted to bring this up. And if you're down to, I can pop the screen up a little bit too. We can talk later. I like getting the visuals. No one wants to look at me and you the whole time.
Oh, I know.
I give the visuals. But this is one of those examples, though, I would say, and where, how I was saying about basing stuff on last year, this is one of those ones where I think you ball it up and you throw it in the trash and you don't worry about last year because I think that the targets are going to be higher. The volume he's going to see is going to be increased. And to Ski's point, I think the receptions is the play versus the yards. Like if you look at this graph right now, are you inclined to bet the over on his receptions? No. I like that you're getting a plus price. When you're getting a plus price on a prop, it's really nice. And I think that this is kind of contrarian because look at the numbers as far as his receptions. He wasn't getting it there nearly as much. And you're worried about the O-line. We're worried about their offense in general. I think they're going to have to kind of check it down to a guy like that. He's going to be kind of a safety blanket. I will say this. Whenever I talk props, I always mention to people, if something to me is a yard or a reception guy, this guy is definitely a reception guy versus a yards guy. So,
well, I was
we'll
going to say, if
pop
do you
that.
see is if you see Freddie backstage, bring him in, because he'll know exactly, he'll be all over what they're going to do for a game plan in this game. And I thought, we did a couple spaces earlier this week. I think he might have like a team total underplay in this. I can't. I'll wait for him to chime in, but like I said, I kind of defer to him when it comes to Steelers. So I think we should get his opinion, because it'll be probably spot on.
What's up, Freddie?
How you doing, boys?
Hey, we're talking your Steelers right now. We need you to. I kind of lean under. We've got Ski thinks a Freiermuth anytime touchdown might work. So we're interested to see what you think about your team today.
Yeah, I definitely expect Fields to start. I don't know if it's been confirmed or not. I kind of been expecting that since Thursday, Friday, when Wilson just did some work on the sideline and Fields ran with the ones. I don't know if it's official yet, but I think that Russ has to look really good there in pregame warm up to really not practice all week and be out there. I also think Tomlin kind of used it maybe as a little bit of a smoke screen to, prevent Atlanta from maybe going full go preparing for Fields. So I guess that's the first thing. I'd be surprised if it wasn't Fields. And that brings, I guess, another bunch of unknowns to this game because he's obviously new to the program, and definitely brings more of a running element to his game. So I kind of expect the Steelers to have a pretty conservative game plan as it is. Obviously, bringing in the new OC, who's known for leaning on the run game, coming from Atlanta, actually. So I'd expect to see a lot of kind of RPOs with Fields, and obviously Najee, Jalen Warren, their two backs there. I expect to see even Cordell Patterson maybe get a few touches, maybe then with the occasional deep shot to Pickens, because that's where they're very thin on the outside there. Pickens should draw a lot of attention, but I do think they're going to make more of an effort to try and get the ball to him in space, and I guess take the top off the defense. And I just caught what you were saying about Freiermuth. He was banged up last year. Very, I think, underrated tight end. Great hands. I do think certainly will be featured in the red zone when they get down there, just because their lack of, I guess, playmaking, catching ability is limited to really him and Pickens. So yeah, that's kind of how I see the Pittsburgh side of it. I did bet Atlanta's team total under 23.5 myself. I guess a couple things for me. Cousins has obviously missed the preseason coming back from the Achilles. I feel like that's more of an issue for guys kind of a little bit further along. I know he's in his mid-30s now. They also have a new OC. I know everyone's kind of really excited. I believe it's Zach Robinson's his name from McVay's system there with the Rams. So they're expecting the Falcons to be much more spread out. But I wonder in this game with, edge rushers like TJ Watt, Alex Highsmith, even their third guy in the depth chart there, Nick Herberg, is pretty explosive. So I don't think it's the easiest matchup for Cousins to kind of come back into. And then I really kind of like how Joey Porter has been trending as a cornerback one for the Steelers. I think he matches up well with Drake London, which then probably takes Cousins' first option and limits that. So probably a heavy dose of Bijan, I would imagine, too. I don't think this is a game where the Falcons show all their their weapons and maybe new bells and whistles, because the Steelers offense, to me, kind of profiles as being pretty conservative and really not gonna, I don't think, blow Atlanta out of this game. So I just felt like 23.5. I see it more like a 2017 game, one where each team kind of is ball control, a lot of running, more conservative. They allow Cousins to kind of get in the game a little bit, maybe shake some of the rust off. And I'm sure they don't really want to expose him to some, 5-step drops against Watt coming off the edge there that could obviously do some damage there initially. So I kind of, think this might be a more conservative game plan by each team. And I do think Steelers do have a very strong defense this year. One thing about not playing the quarterback big money is you get to kind of beef up other parts of your team. And with Cam Hayward now healthy and Patrick Queen coming in to kind of help with some of those routes across the middle to join some of the other guys I mentioned on the edge, I do think their defense is going to be very good. Their offense, I'm not really sold on yet, but yeah, I think it'll be kind
Freddie,
of a competitive.
You got me. You got me fired up for this under a little bit. I mean, your analysis is kind of making me like the under. I leaned a lot more, and it wasn't even a play I had before hopping on this show. So
I know a lot of people kind of like the full game over just because they're projecting the Falcons' offense to look a lot different. So I guess that remains to be seen. I guess, but I felt like this game it's a bit of more of a tricky first matchup for them, particularly with Cousins not having preseason to shake some of the rust off, and now you're getting. I think the Steelers would be a good defensive unit. So, yeah, I chose, I guess, just to isolate the Falcons side of it, and I guess just worry about the Steelers on defense, just because I felt like the game plan was going to be run the ball, short, quick throws, be okay with punting, playing field position. Kind of keeping the game close into the second half. And I would expect that to be the case too with if it is indeed Fields. I'm sure they don't want to put too much on his, put the game completely in his hands coming over. So I guess we'll see. I mean, Arthur Smith, their new OC, has been maybe criticized in the past for being too conservative. So I'm sure he's going to stick to what he does, the tight end sets, run the ball. It just seems like more of a game where Atlanta really doesn't need to expose Cousins too much, and maybe is playing from ahead anyway. So I guess we'll see. But that was the best angle I thought. The Falcons under 23.5. I just felt like there's more chances than not that the Steelers defense keeps them in this game.
Yeah, and in general, how much do you think too? Just totals across the board. I know we did see some scoring. I guess we saw some scoring in the first two games. I think that last play, did that last play in the Chiefs-Ravens game keep that under by a half? I don't remember what that ran off, but
yeah. Well, there were two.
Right.
Some people hit, some people didn't.
Right.
Depending on what number you had, yeah.
But and then of course the Eagles and the Packers, I think, needs to be viewed in a little bit of a vacuum because it's in Brazil. I don't know. I feel like sometimes those games turn into shootouts and stuff like that. Do you think though generally if you're looking at totals across the board today, you're probably seeing more vanilla game plans than you did 5 years ago in week one because these guys get so many fewer reps in the preseason, specifically starters. I kind of agree with what Freddie's saying. I would be shocked if Atlanta's pulling out all the stops and showing their hand, especially with the fact that they just don't run as many reps in the preseason anymore. So, there are spots where I think you're going to see points today, but I would say collectively on the whole, you look at almost all of these games. I'm just going to run down the list. And I feel like the books, there's outliers Jags Dolphins looks like it's got a total near 50. But other than that, Steelers Falcons 42, Vikings Giants 41, Panthers Saints 41, Patriots Bengals 41, 44 and Titans Bears. I feel like they're kind of baiting you to take the over in a lot of these games. And you're probably going to get more games where there's a feeling out process. And then you get your 2017 final, like the one we're talking about here. So that's just my thought on that.
I can also argue there might be points. I like the idea behind the feel out process, and a lot of times I'm more of a first half under full game over guy. But I'm telling you what, for some reason I have a feeling today we could see some kind of quick starts and then things slow down a little bit too. And that's why people get kind of pissed off. Right? And shout out to Freddie because everybody talks about team total overs, right? All you hear is overs, overs, overs. And that's a good bet team total under that you're looking at there, Freddie. I like that one quite a bit.
Yeah, and then they're definitely. I think you'll have your points, but Freddie, I think we talked about an over that you liked earlier in the week, which I'm sure the number is long gone, but that's what I'm just at the market as a whole. Jags Dolphins is up to 49.5. Theoretically you should see points in that game, but now they're asking you to get 50. which is it can be tough for to hit a total. Did you want to comment on that one, Freddie? Jags Dolphins.
The Jags Dolphins.
Yeah.
I mean, it definitely profiles as a game where I think both teams should have opportunities to score. I don't think much needs to be said about Miami side of it. Everyone is very familiar with the weapons they have there. And I do think kind of the Jags secondary is, very weak. I know they had some losses even to their defense in the off season. So I don't think, and even if you look back historically, the last few seasons since McDaniel has taken over there, they seem to always kind of come out of the gate really fast, have some incredibly high scoring, efforts on their side. So I think you have to maybe see that more as not so much like a trend that's just random, but something where he may just be a very creative offensive in terms of preparation, give this guy the whole summer to kind of scheme a game plan for one specific team. And he kind of comes out and has the offense firing on all cylinders. Obviously now they added kind of, in my opinion, an underrated explosive tight end in Jonnu Smith to go with obviously Tyreek and Waddle on the outside there. Obviously they have two good backs, so an incredibly tough offense to try and stop. Particularly, I think I believe Tyson Campbell now is supposed to be the Jags' number one cornerback. I mean, he's a guy who has been consistently graded as below average. So I think Miami scores here. And I guess one team that I looked at in the preseason as being impressive, and it's hard to, I guess you make more of a hypothesis than anything if it's right, but I really like the Jags offense, what they showed. I think Trevor Lawrence is going to have a big day. I have him actually as my starting QB in daily fantasy. I just feel like he's a little bit underrated, and some of the additions they made, obviously drafting Brian Thomas, who I think is going to have a great year. He's not getting maybe some of the attention of Neighbors and, some of the other wideouts that were drafted in early in the draft, but bringing in Gabe Davis is kind of another big play threat. Obviously I believe still having Christian Kirk there. I really like their profile there, especially with Etienne in the background. I think they're going to be a pretty potent offense as well. And I guess I downgraded Miami's defense a little bit. I saw that they believe lost their two best pass rushers in Jalen Phillips and Bradley Chubb. They tried to address that by bringing in Shaq Barrett, but then he randomly retired. So I do feel like the pass rush that maybe protected some of the vulnerability in the secondary maybe needs some time to, get rolling a bit. So I feel like this might be a game where each team gets some offense, and I think the total is high for a reason. I guess odds makers expect that too. So I guess that's the way I'd see it. It'd be over or nothing for me personally in that one.
Craig, real quick, we got to mention everyone's talking about it in the chat. I got my buddies texting me. We got to mention this before we keep the analysis rolling about Tyreek Hill getting arrested or detained on his way to the facility, but he will play.
What's he, Scheffler now?
the reports he will play. Reckless driving. I'm not sure what it was, but I gotta love the chats popping off right now about it. He will. This is what I love. I want to make jokes, but I feel like it could be absolutely anything could happen. And then the end of the tweet would be, but he will dress this Sunday. This guy was in a bar fight last night, but he will play tomorrow. No matter what happens, they're going to play.
if there's one dude that I don't think is going to be fazed by a little pregame arrest, it's probably Tyreek. I think he'll be just fine. I thought this was interesting. I read this earlier this week, which I may have known at one point, but it was interesting to hear it again because I certainly just forgot about this or didn't really realize it until it was brought back up again. So I guess it's going to be really hot in Miami today, which I guess goes without saying. But I did not know they designed their stadium so that the visitors bench was in the sun. Yeah. And theirs is in the shade. At least I didn't that's not something that registered. And I reread that again. I was like, oh, that's now I don't know if it affects the Jaguars. Let's say it would a team coming the Bills, knowing it, as someone that follows the Bills closely, I kind of live in Bills country, and they're always our local team and stuff. They always struggle with that trip down there. Like they never play their best ball. It seems like if they have an early September game in Miami, they always kind of come out a little bit lethargic. Go ahead, Freddie.
No, I was going to say, I remember even the Brady era Patriots always used to struggle with this Miami kind of trip. And I don't know if that had something to do with it or whatnot, but I do remember that from kind of their heyday where they could have like a 12-4, 13-3 season, but it always seemed like they dropped that game in Miami
every year. Every year they would.
I guess I want to take it to the next step in terms of like daily fantasy and some of the props and stuff. I could actually see the Jags playing from behind potentially here, because I don't think it's going to affect Lawrence and the offense. I think it would be the defense that sort of wears down in the like heat, the sun, the humidity, and stuff like that. And then McInnis. So Freddie, before you jumped on, we were kind of talking about like wanting to target. Like if it's easier said than done, but you always like to have a quarterback playing from behind. Like if you want it over, you want the good offensive players and stuff playing from behind. You always want your quarterback playing from behind. So I'm kind of with you with a daily fantasy Trevor Lawrence call right there.
Yeah,
I think that makes a lot of sense.
I'm going to sprinkle on him too, to be I know like DK and some other sites offer like weekly passing leader or like weekly rushing leader, like just which player. And it's usually just the Sunday games. I think he's anywhere between like 16 and 20 to 1 on sites to be the weekly passing leader, Lawrence. I think it's just profiles the game where they're going to have to sling it to stay in the game. He has some new weapons on the outside. So yeah, I guess my prop in this game would be Lawrence over. I think it's like 252.5 yards, passing yards. I think is roughly there. And then maybe a small sprinkle like on him to be the leading passer for the day. I think DK has a 16 to 1.
Yeah,
he's a good passing prop guy.
Well, yeah, I mean, listen, if the Jaguars are lethargic and they're behind, I would be shocked if you're not hitting that 16 to 1. I really feel like I got to go find that. I got to play that with you. I can't.
Here are the numbers for Miami's defense. Completion percentage allowed, passing touchdowns allowed. And look at the rushing yards. That's what I love looking at, is like what a team is good at, and then betting the other thing. Like look at rushing yards per attempt. That was the same thing I was going to say going back to the Steelers game, Freddie, is that based on what I was looking at, is that Atlanta's run game is what you want to utilize. So even though I assume you're a Steelers fan, right? And I make fun of the Steelers running backs quite a bit, They got some guys that can make plays in the wideouts, but their running back room's been weird. But sometimes, like from a betting perspective, those are the guys you can make money on, right? Like I wouldn't be shocked to see, the running props do well for the Steelers today. And here we go. We got the Miami defense, ranking pretty good, as we can see here. But completion percentage allowed and kind of the attempts given up each game, guys. This one I've had a real tough time with. I'm leaning towards like this what didn't end up being an official play for me by any means, but I kind of lean towards the dog here. You love to get that hook if you can get to 3.5, but I do think that it'll be kind of the Jags fighting to cover this, not winning all game type of thing. You know what I mean? Like they're going to be kind of clawing back, the Miami scores a big play, then Jacksonville has to answer. That's kind of the vibe I get from it. And Trig, you mentioned the high total here. I know everyone's got to be careful with live betting, but doesn't this to me seem like one of those games where you'd only play the over if you can get a decent number? Like I'd love to be able to get a more reasonable number in game if I can.
I didn't realize. I think I had my games backwards. I don't think this one moved that much. I think this was 49. So I think this one opened high. So I don't think this one moved a ton. So maybe 49.5 is still playable. I think I got my games backward there. That's just I mean I guess the point I'm trying to make is I don't really think at 49.5, like I misspoke earlier. I don't think you're taking like a terrible number at 49.5. I think I got that confused with a different game. And then, so yeah, like, listen, if something was 46 and now it's 49, I think you got to stay off. But I think I misspoke. I think this one was like 48.5, 49 at open. Someone correct me if I'm wrong, because I don't.
You're right. I think it opened anywhere between 49, 49.5.
So yeah, I want to backtrack on what I said. I think you can still play that. If you like points, you like the over. I think 49.5 is still playable. I probably wouldn't play it at 50 or 50.5. I think you're getting too far away there. I know it's like 1 point, but you just don't want to get a scenario where you take a bad number and lose, like, because you didn't get it sooner. So I don't. Right. I think I think it's still playable at 49.5. And that's we talk about the ability to bet in game with football, NFL. Like, if you see the Jaguars fall, like go down early, like, and it looks like they're going to play from behind, I'd be shocked if there's not at least 50 points in this game. So do what you will with that.
Trig, I want to mention a game that I've been talking about on every show pretty much I've been doing, and it's an ugly one, but you said you're on the same page. I really like the Panthers here. I know some people that got like 5.5, 6 somehow in the summer. I just saw that most books now have 3.5. So I hope you got 4.5. I hope you got 4, guys. Now 3.5. There's so much to like about this, but there's also it's ugly, right? It's an ugly one, but I don't mind it. We're fading Derek Carr. We're fading Dennis Allen. I think the offensive line's going to be better. I think Bryce Young has a year under his belt. Am I crazy for liking Deontay Johnson as much as I do? Probably am. I think Hubbard's going to have a decent day, and I think it's going to be an ugly one.
Yeah, I mean, I do like the Panthers here. I got 4. I wish I had a better number, but like it was just like FOMO bet for me here, McInnis. I thought I could still play at 4, and I watched. So the one team I think I watched every snap of their preseason was the Saints. For one reason or another, I was just enthralled with the Spencer Rattler, Jake Haener backup duel. I had a couple bets on that. So for one reason or another, I think I watched every snap of Saints preseason football this year. And I said something to Freddie earlier this week when we did our spaces on Monday. Like, the one team I probably watched in the preseason and thought, okay, like, I was watching more for the backup. So it's like totally different, right? Like what mattered in the preseason to me from a betting standpoint does not really matter now that it's starters. But man, the Saints missed so many tackles in those games I watched. And oftentimes it was still their starting unit on there, that a lot of people are going to make the case like, okay, Saints have turnover on the offensive line. And I agree with that stuff. But what I think is getting a little bit downplayed is what a disaster defensively they were, in terms of like being out of position, missed tackles, penalties. Now we're for real. Maybe they can clean that up. But boy, I don't know that they look 4 points better than the Panthers on paper, who clearly have improved. So I'm not a big Bryce Young guy, though. I got to be honest. Like, if the Panthers don't cover this game, it's going to be because he turned the ball over or something. Like,
that's why the run game is so important to me, Trig, in this one. And that's why I really like Hubbard to have a really good game here. And you mentioned, I love how that you accidentally like segued for me, because one of the stats that I found was how poor the tackling was from the running defense of the Saints. It was absolutely
so bad.
Brutal.
It was it was noticeably worse. Like, I watched a lot of preseason football, but it was so bad. Like, I don't even think poor doesn't even justice. Like, there was just blatant missed tackles, open field. Like, it was horrific. Go back specifically to the 49ers game when the starters were on the field. The tackling was so bad. I'm done now. You can.
So they were the 10th worst team as far as yards after contact for running backs on the opposition. So when they actually made contact with the running back they're trying to defend, they were the 10th worst team as far as how many more yards that running back was able to gain. So if you don't want to get behind us on the Panthers, or if you want to join us on the Panthers but also make a player prop, I think Hubbard's the way to go. And Trig, to your point about Bryce Young, how do you make a quarterback feel more comfortable? How do you open up the passing game? You establish the run, right? I think Hubbard. What do you think about that? The Hubbard play.
And a big thing for me
Yeah,
too.
go ahead. Go ahead, Freddie.
I think that was a big point of internal discussion for them this year, was to try and give Young more support. They made two good free agent signings there, Damian Lewis and Robert Hunt. Anytime I watched the Panthers last year, I mean, Young was running for his life, having to basically immediately vacate the pocket. So they improved their offensive line. You mentioned Deontay coming over from Pittsburgh, I'm very familiar with. He'll be a nice safety net, I think, for Young. And they also drafted Xavier Leggett, I believe it is. So some skill guy additions, fortified the interior. Another guy who came up earlier, Canales, is now there. So he's shown kind of what he can do with the quarterback with Baker last year. So I do think maybe a new system and a guy like Canales has shown that he can work with quarterbacks, I think can only improve Young. And you're probably buying him at his absolute basement floor right now. And I think you still get, like some of my friends even said earlier this week, wow, I can bet on New Orleans only -4 to beat, the terrible Panthers. And I think there's a lot of market perception that bleeds from one season to another, where a lot of kind of bettors who, maybe just do this getting up Sunday mornings think that, oh yeah, like the Panthers are still going to be the worst team in the league when, they ignore some of those additions. And for me too, on the other side, New Orleans is basically breaking in a new offensive line, 3 new starters. They lost their all-pro right tackle, Ryan Ramczyk, lost James Hurst, and are basically now starting a rookie at left tackle and 2 other, what I have anyway, is 2 other below average offensive linemen. So I do feel like a guy like Carr, who really depends on a clean pocket, gets in trouble when that time is cut down, could have a tough year. I'm not sure if Carolina has the horses on the D line to get there, but at 4.5, given I think the market perception of Carolina, I think it's a good bet, one I made as well. I guess we'll see, but it's, you got one team who's improved, and I don't think the public wants to give them, I guess, any credit for that. And another team who I still think has a solid defense in the Saints, but my big concern with them is their offensive line. Again, one that may need to gel a little bit in the opener, and you get a couple of car mistakes, and I just don't think they profile as a team that can pull away easily. So if Young can protect the ball, I think this is a tight game in the fourth quarter for sure.
And Carr's reckless. He can be a little reckless. Like, he'll just throw the ball up. I think his decision making is something that kind of helps me with my opinion on the Panthers. So, I'll tell you what, guys, I find it funny when people be like, all right, give me a pick. Like, I had someone, like, I was just hanging with some buddies. They're like, all right, before I let you go, we were watching some UFC. They're like, give me a pick. And I was like, Panthers +4. And they're like, what the hell? I don't want to bet that game. I was like, dude, like, I didn't say you had to watch that game. I just told you a pick that I liked. You know what I mean? That's like, it kind of goes for handicapping as well. Like, you go on social media, even Wager Talk. Like, if we had a headline, Sunday Night Football, like this, or like Bills are playing, or this, nobody gives a shit if we have a really strong opinion on Panthers. There's a reason why this is my free play of the week I've been mentioning on every show. I'm being honest, because like, Trig, you know how it is. Like, no one wants to buy the pick if in my headline I put Panthers, Saints, best bet, right? It's my free play of the week because I really like the play, but no one probably wants to bet this type of game. That's just how people are, right?
Yeah, I agree with you. Go ahead, Freddie, and
you go ahead.
No, because I'm going to change the subject completely. So go ahead. And then,
I was going to say, it's funny how people view that way, but the NFL, almost more than any league, you see teams basically go from the bottom to very much respectability in 1 year. So it's almost like you have to form that opinion, because some of the betting value tends to disappear from teams that you think have improved, because once the market adjusts and realize, oh, this isn't a dog shit team anymore, you're probably not going to be able to get them at underdog price. I'm not saying they're going to be an elite team this year, but I do think they have the potential to be a lot more competitive this year and be a bit of a nuisance as an underdog. So yeah, it's definitely a funny kind of people want to see a team be good before they bet them, but then it's probably too late and you're not getting value. So you got to be ahead of this stuff, I think.
I gotta say two things quick. One, what's up, Jesse Shule in the chat? We got to get him on here someday, to chat with us. But yes, this is my basement, and he said on a thing, he thought I was on a green screen. He's like, we got to get Trig some furniture, and then I think he realized that it's actually my basement with no furniture, and it's like the house we bought is a ranch, so it's only one floor, so we have like this massive basement, and the previous owner had it redone, but like obviously took all their stuff with them. So, yes, right now I have a very large, empty basement that hopefully someday will have furniture in it. But for now, is my and I got the lights off so you can't see it as much. But that is the house is pretty standard. But when you have a ranch and it's like one floor, your basement ends up being massive. Like in the Northeast, we have basements. You won't see that. You won't see that in other parts of the country because of flooding. But here, people like redo their basements and stuff like that. So that's one. And two, I gotta change. Like Freddie, they snuck one past me in minor league baseball today, and I'm so upset right now because again, this is totally random. We'll get back to football in a second. I did not realize that the Buffalo AAA team, and I know you guys are Blue Jays fans, and Freddie and I talk Buffalo AAA sometimes, moved their start time up to 11 a.m. because the Bills are playing at 1. So they didn't want to compete with the Bills. They moved their start time up, and they just snuck in on a Sunday Aurelvis Martinez back into the lineup for the first time since the suspension. And I would have 1,000% given out and played the Bison, who have Trenton Wallace on the mound, who's a guy I've like kind of targeted to play, because they got their A-team lineup out there, and they've got Aurelvis Martinez just casually back off of his PED suspension.
Keep in mind too, I believe Tuesday you're going to get Bo Bichette down there too, so maybe that won't be priced into the market.
Yeah,
but I think Bichette is going to get go on his rehab assignment starting Tuesday. So Martinez back from his suspension, Bichette there.
So if you are watching live and you have a book that has in-game AAA offered, which I think like Bet365, some of the offshores and stuff like that, it is still 1-1 early. I would definitely throw something on Buffalo because that's a serious edge right there. There's no way the books had Aurelvis Martinez popping up for his first action since the PED suspension in an 11 a.m. game that was moved up to not conflict with the Bills kickoff. There's no way the books had that priced into the numbers. So I just would say keep an eye. If you can get that live, it's a good bet. All right, back to football. Sorry, I had to get that out. Okay, well, let's segue, McInnis. How about Bills Cardinals? Because I thought I was going to be all over the Cardinals here, and I kind of talked myself off of it. I think Kyler Murray could potentially have a good game, and I think he could be like have the Cardinals playing better football than maybe the market anticipates. But I don't know that going against the Bills in their home opener. I mean, there's a reason the Bison are moving that game up to 11. Everyone's going to be – no one's going. No one's going to the AAA game today. Everyone's going to be over at the Bills game, so they're going to get that over with. They probably hope by moving it up they can get a couple people in the gate for maybe the first hour, and then people are going to go over to the football game. If you've never been to a Bills game, it's a complete shit show like you've never seen before. Home games are awesome, and so I kind of just decided that I didn't want to poke the bear. I do think the Bills maybe have some issues, specifically on the defensive side of the ball. I think Milano being out is really going to hurt them over time. But I ultimately backed off. So I kind of am starting to lean the Bills to win this game now. I don't know what to do with this one, but I went from thinking Cardinals would be on my card to completely being off of this, and now I almost think that it'd be surprising for the Bills to drop this one. So I'll throw it over to you guys to see if you got any opinions on this one.
You can start, Freddie.
Okay, yeah. I would kind of lean the same way. I mean, I heard a little bit too much Arizona love early in the week. Felt like everyone's favorite underdog. So that initially scared me. I do think they'll be a very scrappy team, potentially be a top 10 offense in the league. Obviously, with Kyler back healthy, the addition there of Marvin Harrison Jr., of course, to join Trey McBride, They have a nice running back duo. So I do think they're a very dangerous offense. What I'd need to see more of before I, put some money on them, particularly on the road, is their defensive improvement. They were dead last in the NFL last year in success rate allowed. So that's pretty scary. And I guess I had the opinion that even though the Bills lost Diggs, lost Gabe Davis, I think their offense is going to look a lot different, but I'm not convinced that it's going to be worse. I think a lot of mistakes from Josh Allen in the past have been forcing the ball to Diggs. Now I feel like he's going to be able to play more of a balanced game, really lean on that run game with Cook, and then spread the ball around to obviously Dalton Kincaid, Shakir, Samuel, Keon Coleman. I think it's just more of a balanced offense, and I think Allen's, like I said, can just find maybe the best matchup versus sometimes these top wide receivers. And Diggs, you often saw him on the sidelines. It almost becomes you force the ball in, make some mistakes. So I actually think the Bills' offense might, be very good, even though maybe public perceptions will take a step back. So again, potential for points, but I don't trust Arizona to get stops in the opener. But might be a team I look to play at home, maybe when their defense can feed off their home crowd. But I'd need to see it with them before I invest personally.
Yeah, I just you don't like to be a trends guy, but the numbers for Derek Carr, or excuse me, for Josh Allen in this point spread range, not good, and the numbers for Kyler Murray in this point spread range, really good. And so I know that Josh Allen's like the talent that they have, and I know how good the Bills have been, but guys, this team hasn't really been great at blowing teams out. Like, if you go through a lot of their wins they've had even over the last few years, they're not a team that's going to put, they're going to absolutely blow you out of the water. They're a team that makes their fan base happy by winning games in the fourth quarter. And I know people don't want to hear that.
McInnis, I got to say something. It sticks with me. I know a guy that plays golf with Josh Allen occasionally. And this is something that I heard this a couple years ago. And there is so many now reference points of like this, there potentially being legs to this. Mm-hmm. A buddy of mine works on the PGA Tour, and he's gotten to golf with Allen a couple times, and he is the coolest dude, like awesome guy to hang out with. But football is just not that dude's like primary life focus. Like, he's got a lot of interests outside of football, specifically loves to golf. Like, whereas like some of these other guys, like I'll give you like a Tom Brady or something, right? Like they're so like hyper competitive, so like totally laser focused on football at this time of year. And there's instances where the Bills in the early going, specifically Allen, does not like he does things where you're like the best example I can think of is Monday Night Football last year against the Jets, where like he looked clueless for like 3 quarters. I mean, throwing the ball into like double coverage, and I'm just like, is there legs to that? You know what I mean? Like because listen, these guys are all the best of the best. If someone is putting in like insane work in June, July, and August to be ready for that week 1 game, and other dudes are still kind of, out on the links and enjoying their summer, and then you add in the element of the fact that these guys just don't want to get hurt, so they don't play in the preseason as much anymore. Listen, like you used to years ago, 4 preseason games, like the starters, they were getting 2-3 weeks of preseason reps, with one of them oftentimes being almost a full game. So you were coming into week 1. It was like, now that doesn't happen as much. And I just have to wonder, it's like, does Allen come into the year slightly less prepared than like the next guy, get by on ability a little bit, and then then obviously like October, November comes, and it's golf season's over, like you're in week 7, and suddenly it's like, all right, it's time to roll. But I mean, I don't know, I can't stop thinking about that. Ever since a couple of years ago, I've been more cognizant of it. When I watch him early in the season, it showed up a couple of times, like the throws in the double coverage, the just kind of taking the massive shot downfield when it's not needed. All of that, that's lack of preparation.
Well, Trig, here's the number. 6, 13, and 1. 31.5%. Josh Allen as a favorite of 6 points or more. 6, 13, and 1.
Well, then you go into the complacency that comes about when you're a touchdown favorite.
Exactly.
You know what I'm saying? Like,
they don't care. Some guys, I hate to break it to sports bettors, they don't care about your point spread. Like, and it also comes down to coaching staffs too, not just the quarterbacks, right? But some guys are going to run teams out of the building, and some guys are going to just win. If they can go home and say, I won for my football team tonight, that's it. You know, and that's the thing about this. And Freddie talked about it kind of being a popular dog with the cards, and that kind of worried me too. But that's the thing, man. Like, a lot of times when I bet underdogs, ATS, we all kind of sprinkle money line, right? This, to me, the Cardinals aren't winning this game. It's a matter of if they hang around enough to cover, right? I would not, if I'm betting the Cardinals on the spread, I don't think I would sprinkle the money line here. They might cover, but they're not going to win.
I don't think they can't win as much as it's just like I think a win is probably less likely for them than plus 250. Like it's the NFL. Like Kyler could come out and totally ball out, and Bills turn it over a couple times and they could win. I just don't think I don't think the likelihood of them winning is like plus 250. I think it's probably more like plus 400. So that's not a bet I would make. But I'll let Freddie kind of wrap it up here. Like that's just I know the point I wanted to make. You see it like baseball players are a little bit more open about this and like have gone on record. You don't hear it as much from football players, but like this is still their job, right? It's still work to some of them. We all sit here and like we had failed athletic careers. We probably played high school sports and think of like how cool it would be to play a sport every day. There's people that think like how cool it would be to like come on shows and talk about sports betting and handicap and sell picks. Let me fucking tell you something. This blows a lot of times. Like it's Sunday morning right now. There's like a million other things. Like, I love this. So I want to be doing this, but like sometimes it's still work. And it goes to like these guys, these athletes, it's still their job. So I don't ever like discount hearing someone be like, they've got other interests than doing their job, because who else if you're doing, who else wants to go to work every single day? Like some days you just don't feel like going to work. Right. So it might take him a little bit of extra motivation, and that oftentimes can be the difference in covering 7 or not. So I think it was important to point out.
And it is a job. It is a job for those guys. And that's point. It's definitely worth noting. Freddie?
Yeah, no, agree with what you guys have been saying in the past. I guess Brady taking over last year as their OC definitely leaned on James Cook a little bit more. It's the reason I have him in my daily lineups today too. I just feel like they'll probably be more of a dual threat running. I really feel like this will be a big season for Allen. Everyone, I think all I heard in the I guess between over the summer was all the losses they had. I won't be surprised. I guess it might be on an island here, but he's kind of won't be surprised at all if he's the league MVP this year. It just feels like a guy who may go out and silence everyone, put it all on his back. But for today, yeah, I couldn't get to the window either way. Outside of having James Cook on my fantasy team, I think potential for points both ways. And given that Joe Brady really leaned on the run when he took over last year, and the Cardinals having such a poor run defense and likelihood of Bills playing from ahead, I think probably a nice guy to have in your lineups.
Do you guys think if anyone likes the Cardinals, they should just be on the over? Because I kind of lean the Cardinals, but then the more I think about it, the more I'm like, if the Cardinals cover, there's probably going to be points in the game. The Bills are going to score points, right?
You definitely got to like Kyler if he's behind, because he's just going to like, you know what I mean? Like if the Cardinals are behind, and it's especially if it's like a 14-point game, like toward the end or something like that. I mean, he's going to like, if the Bills go into prevent, he'll shred them. Like he'll just take what they get. Like, so you got to think it could get there one way or the other. This feels like a game. Go ahead.
Yeah. I guess a few things I'd say. This one was bet down pretty heavily. I think it opened like 48-ish. Now it's like 45.5. So you will be buying the dip. I guess the one thing that scared me off the total is I expect, as you mentioned, Trig, Milano out. I expect Arizona to kind of run the ball, whether it's Kyler or Connor or Benson, those three guys. So the clock moving. And as I mentioned, I expect a fair heavy dose on the ground from the Bills too, with basically what Brady showed last year, and whether it's Cook or Allen kind of using their legs. So I guess the concern would be kind of maybe the clock moving a little bit more readily than you'd like for an over. But I do think both offenses have decent matchups. It's just a matter of how long the drives take to get down the field. They might be more plotting drives versus what we saw Friday, where you had some quick hitting 50, 60-yard touchdowns that kind of were great for over bettors that kind of give you those extra possessions.
Yeah, it's good to point out. A couple people in the chat noted that it could be pretty windy. I think it's something that deserves being pointed out. Could
always a potential issue there too. I think.
Yep.
I read once if it gets over maybe like 20 miles an hour, it's that's where you start to see people jumping in the market, looking at an under. I think there's a strong kind of correlation between games maybe ending up just in like the low 40s if the winds are sustained over that. So could certainly be
dude.
What's going on.
If you are not from that area, like you have no clue how crazy that lake effect type weather is, where it's like it'll be windy and then it'll be like really, really windy where you're like, where the hell did this come from? The snow works that way too. I mean, I've been at Bills games before that it was perfectly clear for 3 quarters, and then the fourth quarter is just a whiteout. Like it's the weather is so crazy in Buffalo. I mean, I get some of that crazy weather in central New York, but nothing like living in like Buffalo or like, let's say Cleveland or anything that's along, was it Lake Erie or one of the big lakes up there? So yeah, if there is wind in the forecast, like rest assured, like if it gets going, it'll be bad, like far worse than, let's say, the wind, if there's reported wind in another part of the country, it's like a little bit more.
It would make it all. Yeah. It would make it all the more likely that those two offensive coordinators lean on the run too. So that, I guess, plays into my concern. But I feel like on paper, at least, both offenses have decent matchups. It's just they may just lean more to the run game than throwing the ball, particularly if, like you said, it's gusty there.
Looking to see if we had. I think Jesse might have made a comment about Texans Colts. This was one I couldn't really figure out. And I understand why, like, there's some sharp money on the Colts. The Texans are priced as like an elite option all of a sudden. I think I'd be like maybe willing to, fade that in the early going from like a point spread standpoint, but I'm not sure that I don't know how much I love the Colts. So I kind of, this was one I quickly sort of passed on. I don't know. Do you guys have opinions here?
I lean towards the dog in this one. I like the number we're getting, and I think there's a lot of worry about health and stuff like that, and the playmakers and stuff. But to me, this is to me an example where you're going to see. I think you're going to see an offense have to be. It's like people say a good offense is a good defense makes for a good offense. Well, sometimes people say a good offense can make up for a bad defense. I feel like the Colts are going to just put up a ton of points, and I feel like their offense is going to be good enough for them. They're going to have really long drives. The Colts, for me, are all about how they utilize their run game. If they can run the ball, if they can put up some yards in the ground today, that's going to be the difference in that ball game. I like the number that we're getting here, so I'd lean towards that. Again, didn't make the top picks, my client card here or my official picks, but I'd go towards a dog in that one.
Yeah, I tend to agree, I guess, a little bit. I want to see kind of how Houston's offense looks with some of the additions they made. Obviously, Diggs coming over there. Kind of want to see how the ball gets shared around there before I maybe invest or fade them. I did like some of the additions they made on defense, bring in Hunter, Derek Stingley, I believe, in the secondary room. So I do think they maybe have improved their defense. And I guess another reason I didn't want any part of the game, it's really hard to project Anthony Richardson. Like, the guy has game-breaking ability with his legs, as you just mentioned, but we've seen so little of him that I'm not really sure if it's what he is at this point. Obviously, Taylor back there with him makes them a pretty dynamic duo to have to contain in the run game. So these are two teams, I guess, in terms of, my own ratings or who they are. I want to see a little bit more, particularly Richardson, just because he has the ability to be a great fantasy quarterback, but how is he going to kind of readjust, get back in to the flow of things? Kind of a dangerous offense, but I think I needed to see it with my own eyes first.
Let me just say something though. This is I think the ultimate reason I kind of passed on this. The only reason that I have any reservations about playing the Texans here or getting involved with the Texans is because they went from, because I loved the Texans last year, and they went from like no expectations, huge overachiever, CJ Stroud having literally the best rookie season of any quarterback in the history of the game, to instant contender. And those are the things that like historically I've been more willing to like fade. But if the Texans, if all the additions work out and if it clicks, that's not a team I want to be on the other side of. So like that to me is like that to me, like if like I think they're both very good teams, but I think the Texans upside is very high. It's really all of to me, it's like a mentality thing. How does Stroud and how do the Texans do coming in as a team with the target on their back, as opposed to last year when, I want to say week 1, they were a 10-point underdog to the Ravens. And it was like, you watch this team and you're like, oh, this might be one of the worst teams in the league. And then, I think they actually went out and lost the next week to Anthony Richardson and the Colts in kind of like a shootout. And so that's my only concern. And then of course, having to lay 3 on the road, you're definitely being asked for a little bit of a premium with the Texans. But yeah, I am not, I still think the Texans is the better of these two teams. So I wouldn't want to run into them like putting it all together, because I do think the Texans win if that's the case.
Yeah. Lane 3 on the road at probably your peak market pricing is, it's hard to find, I think, betting value in that, particularly like a divisional game. Again, don't bet with trends very often, but I know like week 1 divisional dogs at home is a pretty strong system that a lot of people look to, particularly when you now can get 3 points. So definitely a game I'm interested in keeping an eye on, because we'll potentially look to play on or get involved in some games. Colts kind of intrigue me with the potential their offense has, but again, need to see with my own eyes first.
Which dog do you guys like more? I know it's always a funny game to play, but Titans or Colts? Which one would you be if you had to make one bet out of those two underdogs? Which one would you guys line up to bet?
Oh, Titans, no question. Not even
Titans,
close.
Yeah. That's the same for me. To me, it's you want to talk about hype, Trig? You were just talking about it. Hype for a team collectively going into a season. Can we not say a lot of the same things you just said about the Texans, kind of about the Bears? I mean, I understand that they're expected to take a big elevation, right? Big elevation. It's not going to happen right away.
The difference is the Texans already proved something, right? So it's like so I'd be more willing to sell the Bears. Now, it's not that I don't think they could be potentially pretty good. Like they're probably going to have some success this year. It's just, I think you've got people seeing a 4-0 preseason. I don't know. I'm not fully willing to just sell the Bears and be like, oh, like they're never going to live up to the hype. But I do think it's a challenging spot for them in week 1 against a Titans team that I actually like quite a bit, that I think kind of quietly takes a step forward. Like they don't have as much, it's not as in your face, but like Levis is in his 3rd year. I've said for years that I wanted them to move on from the Tannehill, Derrick Henry sort of like old guard that couldn't get them further than like, the first round of the playoffs years ago. And now they finally have. So like, I actually think the Titans are one of the teams that's not getting talked about enough. I think they could potentially be a far better than people are kind of giving them credit for. And I think you're going to get like, Freddie, I think we talked about on Monday, possibly a much different look from their offense with Callahan as opposed to Vrabel. So I like what they've got going on down there. So yeah, Titans would be the better bet over the Colts if I had to pick between the two.
This is the one, if you're like a casual NFL fan and you watch this game, you'll be shocked how the Titans offense is going to look versus maybe when you last saw them with Vrabel as the head coach and Henry there. They brought in Brian Callahan from Cincy, who last year anyway, Cincy, even with Burrow going out, had the highest neutral game pass rate. So you ignore score. This is a guy who likes to spread the field, throw the ball. So that's why you're getting a lot of love for like Will Levis in fantasy. They basically tried to appease Callahan by bringing in some wide receivers like Calvin Ridley. So I feel like the Titans are going to be a much different looking offense this year. One prop I like today involving the Titans was Tony Pollard over 10.5 receiving yards. I watched a little bit of the Titans in the preseason, and Levis was targeting his running backs, whether it was him or Tajay Spears, a fair amount. So I feel like that might be an area to go to. Particularly, that's an area where the Bears had a lot of trouble last year. I believe they gave up the highest amount of yards out of the backfield to receiving running backs. So that's one I like there. But definitely kind of an adjustment for anyone preparing for the Titans this year. And I guess, as you mentioned, a little bit more of an unknown from the Bears offense with Williams there. I do think they've surrounded them with some nice weapons now with DJ Moore, Keenan Allen, DeAndre Swift. So I do think there's some playmaking ability there. Titans made some nice additions on their defense, bringing over Snead in the secondary. So, yeah, probably a lot to decipher with this game because you have kind of two new look teams. I was kind of gravitated early in the week last weekend, kind of look at the over here. I think I have like over 43.5 maybe. I see the market has kind of come back down to that. It was like 45.5 midweek. So I'm not sure if there's a little bit of weather there today, just because I kind of looked at maybe the Titans being a new look offense that the market wasn't I guess lining right, and then the Bears probably having a little bit of explosive potential with Williams' legs and some of the receivers. So that's what I'm on there. I guess we'll find out as the day goes along, but I do like that prop. I think Pollard gets targeted a little bit and probably finds a way to get closer to 20 yards than the 11 that you'd be asked for.
I love that. I love taking running backs, receptions props, or receiving yards props. I love it.
I got an interesting. This will segue into a different game. I know I've seen it pop into the chat a couple times, but I just got an alert that like Dak Prescott just got paid literally like an hour ago. Huge contract. Yeah. This was one I kind of flip flopped on this week. I think it's going to be a really good game. Browns Cowboys. Like I think this is going to be a really good game. I don't have a play here. Do you think that Dak getting paid like gives them a little extra motivation for today? Like, does it matter? Does it not matter? Like, does that gonna, I don't know, because this was one I feel like you can make a pretty solid case for and against both of these teams in this game. But I don't know, like if you gave me a huge contract, at least that day, I'd be like ready to run through a wall for you. So, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know if that like plays into your guys' handicap at all, but I ultimately couldn't get there with this one. But I think I'd almost lean Cowboys just for the sole fact that, maybe you get like a huge effort from Prescott. Who knows?
Does that mean like only 3 interceptions today? Is that what that means? Not 4?
Listen, and then the other thing I'll point out is like the Browns have some offensive line issues that I don't think they were fully like. I didn't hear this early in the week, but it looks like Conklin's questionable now, and I think they're going to be without Willis already. So buyer beware if you want to back the Browns. I don't know if I'd be.
Jesse's going against you here. He says there's data that shows the opposite.
Maybe, but listen. I think that's anecdotal. Like I just was more or less joking. Like that's not ever something I would bet on. What I am willing to bet against though is offensive linemen being out. And that scares me with the Browns. If the Browns are down 2-0 linemen, I want no part of the Browns today.
Yeah. Sorry.
Real quick, I was just going to say we got a lot of people here on Twitter right now, and I know it's way easier to watch on X, on Twitter. Got my guy Ethan here saying, just subscribe. Looking forward to following along with the channel. If you guys can do me a favor and just hop over to the YouTube, even just for a minute, subscribe to the channel. even if you're not watching on YouTube, I appreciate everybody watching on X, whether it's from Adam's Twitter or mine or Freddie's. But just do me a favor. I'm trying to grow the YouTube channel. And I understand more people want to just pop on. They're scrolling through their phone on Twitter. But guys, try and do me a favor and get those numbers up on the subscriptions. I'd really appreciate that. If you can sub to the YouTube channel, we got 420 people here, probably only about 20 people watching on YouTube. So if you're watching on X, just do me a solid, slide over to YouTube and subscribe to the channel. I'd really appreciate it. So I just wanted to squeeze that in
over right
quick.
now and making sure I am subscribed to the channel, because that would be very hypocritical of me if I wasn't. So, because we're using a different channel. We're using McInnis's channel. So yeah, this will growing this one will help us do more shows like these that are kind of like less rigid, and we can just kind of kick it around. So this is great. And I also was not subscribed, at least for my phone. So there's a subscription right there.
Yeah, I appreciate it. It's funny because it's great to see like a packed house, and hey, whether you hate him or you love him, Elon has definitely helped the live video stuff on Twitter.
Oh yeah, for sure.
People can scroll Twitter now while they're listening to us, and they can comment from Twitter. But yeah, there's going to be some streams I'm going to do where it's just doing YouTube. Anyway, Freddie, I apologize, man. Just wanted to kind of get that out of there. I hate to be doing some promotion and stuff like that, but if you guys can show some love and just hit subscribe, that's all I was going to say. But over to you, Freddie.
Yep. No, my concern, I guess, for this one with Dak was no snaps in the preseason, which is, I guess, if you look at the history going back the last 5-6 years when this has become more of a thing, generally some adjustment period. Lost his pro left tackle there, Tyron Smith. Starting center, Tyler, I think, Biadasz is gone. New kind of, Tony Pollard is kind of safety net now gone. Michael Gallup gone. A lot of new kind of offensive pieces there. And now they're going up against the Browns defense, who I'm very familiar with, and they play kind of lights out in Cleveland. Obviously, you have Zadarius Smith, Myles Garrett, a good kind of secondary group there with Denzel Ward. I don't think a Profiles is the easiest matchup for a Cowboys offense, who I think everyone loves, because when they're rolling, particularly at home, they can put up 40-50 points and they look unstoppable. But there's a lot of struggles on the road last year, and now you get a maybe a slightly rusty Dak with adjusting to some new skill position guys. I'm interested to see how they do here. I didn't really want any part of the Browns either, because on the other side, I just don't really trust what the Browns have there offensively. Deshaun Watson also was not involved in the preseasons, coming off shoulder injury, I believe it is. So I need to see a little bit more. And as Adam said there, Jed Willis is out. So nothing really kind of motivating me to play either side. I'm not surprised here that the under is taking a little bit of money. I think this was kind of like mid 40s, and now it's like closer to the 41-42 range, just on the premise that you have two quarterbacks who didn't see any action in the preseason. You have some new guys being broken in on the offensive line, and you have two pretty good defenses. So I wouldn't be surprised to see this be a hard fought, maybe lower scoring game than people maybe expect when they hear Dallas and think of obviously like Dak and CeeDee Lamb and all those kind of shiny weapons that they tend to have. But Cleveland at home, it tends to be kind of a some wind going on there too. Not the easiest place to play offense sometimes. So I didn't bet the game, but I'd be surprised if both offenses look sharp, I guess, out of the gate at least.
I do have a small bet on the under in this game. This is one of the totals I liked. Yep. One of the unders I liked, and for a lot of the same reasons that you said there, Freddie. I think that if we see points, they're going to be in the second half. I could see things really starting off slow. I could see a conservative game plan. I could see both teams wanting to establish the run. And I'm curious to see what, to your point about the quarterbacks and the reps in the preseason and stuff like that, the lack thereof it. I'm curious to see how they deal with pressure early on. And I don't know if there's going to be that many explosive plays right away. The pass rush is going to be there. And, sometimes interceptions can create offense, but also I think that, there's going to be one, maybe two interceptions that benefit us. A team might be deep in their opponent's end and we see a Dallas interception. We see the Browns pick something up. I think this is going to be one of those games where the game has potential to see a lot of touchdowns, but they're settling for kicks. They're settling for three. They're punting. And it's a low total, guys. We have to understand it's low for a reason. This one's going to be kind of a dogfight. It's going to be kind of a battle.
Yeah, and the other thing you want to talk about, like potentially a slow start with the, offensive. The Cowboys have O-line issues, and now potentially the Browns having a couple of them out. Like, no way are they going to want to subject their quarterback to like big time pressure early, because that's like, if they show the ability, if they show they're exposed in the passing game, like if they let's say they're dropping back and like, suddenly it's obvious that they can get to them by bringing pressure, in the passing game, then all these guys are going to do, they're going to like completely load the box against the run, and they're going to have no, like, you're definitely going to see them not want to show their hand in the first half, because I think neither will, definitely the Cowboys. And then if the Browns are without two offensive linemen, they're not going to want to like give the other team shots to like get to their quarterback, at least in the early going, because then it like renders the run ineffective. So I think I'm with you, McInnis. I think you're going to see both teams try to just pound the ball early, because at least they have the running the running back position is good enough where they might be able to like Derrick Henry themselves a few yards, right? Like, doesn't matter how good the offensive line is, they can just steamroll in for 4 or 5 yards, pick up a couple first downs, and not get crushed in the field position game. So I kind of agree with that.
I'm always wary of teams with either new left tackles and new centers, because the center kind of communication is so important, whether it's the kind of changing the protections, and obviously left tackle guarding the blind side, and Dallas now has to break in a rookie left tackle, which I know is the first round pick, but immediately has to go against Myles Garrett, which is good luck. I mean, that's a tough first assignment. And on the other side, we mentioned there the left tackle for Cleveland, Jed Willis, is also out. So you have some talented pass rushers. I think, like you said there, I think the OCs are going to look to get the ball out quick. Tight ends could be a good look, like David Njoku. Could be looking for him over the middle, kind of some quicker, more high percentage throws. I don't think they're going to want their guys maybe, those 7-step drops hanging around in the pocket too long, because I think both D-lines have the ability to create a little bit of havoc.
I saw I saw something crazy yesterday about, I tweeted it out actually, about Njoku, and one for him was his longest reception prop over has hit in 5 straight games. Guys, the number is 17.5. These are the lists for his last 5 games. 45 against the Texans, 43 against the Jets, 21 against the Texans, 34 against the Bears, 34 against the Jags. His number is 17.5, and he hasn't even had to sweat this prop for his backers at all. And I know these types of props can be kind of weird for some people, but there's certain types of receivers that aren't going to be volume guys, but when they do get targets, this is kind of the range that they are. So, when the number is 17.5, give him 2 targets that are past that number. He's going to catch one of them. I think the data's there. I'm a little bit curious. To me, this is kind of one that I'm going to sprinkle a little bit something on there.
One of the things when I was doing, I guess, my fantasy draft this year, he led tight ends in targets and yards after week 10 last year. Kind of a guy who, sometimes the light bulb, so to speak, goes off. And I think Watson and I guess just their whole offensive room began to understand that they could trust him. And that was an area where Dallas struggled last year. I believe they were bottom 5 against tight ends with respect to target share allowed. So I do have him tucked on a daily fantasy roster today, just because I feel like it's more of a gritty game. I think he at least gets some receptions, and he's a major red zone threat for them when they get down there, particularly now without kind of their lead back, Nick Chubb. I think they have to look for other ways to kind of punch it in. So I think he's an underrated tight end that doesn't get the love that obviously some of the bigger names get. But if you just isolate it to the last 7-8 games last season, he was a top 2 tight end. So might be a guy to keep in mind. Another
prop I like, guys, is Rico Dowdle. you hear so many funny mixed reviews about this guy depending on which fantasy site you're reading and where you're kind of getting your reports. But a lot of the reports I saw over the past few days even is get ready to see a shocking workload. Get ready to see the running back room be a committee for the Dallas Cowboys here. His number is 30.5, and he's only hit this over in 30% of his last 10 and 20 games. But it's different this year. So it's kind of like what I was saying with Trig at the start of the show here, is that sometimes you base props and picks off last year. But there's also sometimes where you're going to get a number that is lower than it should be because they're basing their information off last year. So, Freddie, any thoughts on Dowdle? Because, if you look at the data, it really says, man, this guy does not go over 30.5 rushing yards. But if you kind of look at the room right now, I feel like he could be sharing the touches a lot more than he once was.
Love it. Yeah. He's the guy I had pegged later in drafts just because I don't buy Zeke being able to handle a full workload or stay healthy. Has had a great career, but I don't think he's that guy anymore that's going to be leaned on to be, your every down back. So I feel like he's a guy you can buy low on or take a chance on. And maybe be very happy with if Zeke gets banged up. So I do think I don't know if they're going to split the carries, but I feel like he's going to get plenty of touches. Maybe not the easiest matchup today against that Browns defense, but kind of circling back to what we just said, if maybe a more conservative game plan, they might look to get him some extra touches today than he would otherwise. And definitely has that more explosive ability than Zeke. Zeke at this point is, he's lost that step a little bit. So I think he could be one of your underrated kind of fantasy running backs this year, particularly if Zeke gets banged up. And I think he's a guy, as you mentioned, that the books aren't really sure how to price, given that now there's no more Tony Pollard and maybe Zeke having that number one tag. But I don't necessarily think that they're going to give Zeke a full workload. So, yeah, I like it.
And I kind of like that it's a contrarian prop too a little bit. It goes against a lot of the numbers we've seen from him. I think a lot of people seem down on this guy. And props are one of those things where you could be on a popular one and it could hit, but it's also kind of a nice feeling to be on a contrarian one and be on one that people are kind of down on a little bit. So he's someone that we can count on, I think, here. And here's something to mention. Are you going to get 30.5 with him in 3 weeks? Are you going to get 30.5 with him in week 4? Isn't that the goal of what we're all trying to do here? I mean, get numbers that might not be here on a team in the future. And it's kind of like what you guys mentioned about the Texans, right, Trig? Like you were saying, this is a team that's kind of coming in with more expectations. Similarly here with Dowdle that we're talking about from the prop perspective, if we're betting him, it's kind of like we're buying as low as we possibly can. If he shits the bed, obviously I'm wrong, but if he has a pretty good game, then it might be like 43.5, at some point in the year. So, any other games you guys want to toss up? Yeah, go ahead, Freddie.
He was actually top 25 in points per touch. Again, more of a fantasy kind of conversation, but I think maybe with more of the organizations getting more kind of analytically inclined, they see that maybe this guy deserves more touches because he's producing on the limited looks he got. So they kind of be stupid not to try and get him more involved, particularly with now having a back that probably can't be your every down back if they want to keep him healthy. So I think he has a lot of kind of sleeper potential. And as you mentioned, from a pure betting point of view, if he has that sort of breakout and is more used than people think, then that number is probably in the 40s next week and going forward. So yeah, I agree.
What game should we touch on now here, guys? Anyone, if you're watching live on X or YouTube, let us know. We're going to sign off probably here soon, so throw some games
I was
going to
say, you guys, I mean, I've got to sign off in 5 minutes or so, but obviously feel free to keep it going. I was just trying to scroll through and find one that I kind of had an opinion on that we didn't touch on yet. I'll tell you what could be like the two worst teams playing today could be the Vikings and Giants might be like up there for. I mean, that is going to be a bunch of my college buddies are at that will be at that game. I got a picture of them tailgating earlier down at Giant Stadium or
I'm
MetLife Stadium.
determined. I'm
And
determined to tailgate with you this year, Trig. I'm setting that goal.
we'll go.
In the next
We'll
few
go
months,
to we'll go to a Bills game. Bills tailgate is more fun than MetLife. But yeah, they're like, I just so I here's my take, and I guess we can talk about two games with this, and then I'll take off. I think the Giants are going to be really potentially pretty bad, and I also think the Patriots might be far and away the worst team in the league. So those are two games we haven't really touched on at all. I mean, I'd almost be willing to if you force me to bet that Pats Bengals game, I think I'd lay the 7.5. I saw that get bet down a little bit. I'm pretty sure Chase is in. Someone correct me if I'm wrong. I think he's in and active for today. So the Bengals need a good start as much as any team needs a good start. The way they've started the last few years, and knowing that they have the Chiefs, I believe, next. I mean, man, you'd have to think that the message all week has just been there can't be a letdown to start the season again, right? Because that's what they did. They ended up digging themselves a pretty big hole last year. And you talk about they're at home, they have to go to Kansas City on Sunday night next week, or I'm sorry, Sunday afternoon in the primetime slot. I'm not saying they're going to lose that game, but certainly not an easy game.
Yeah.
I feel like the Bengals probably come out focused. I'm not going to bet this, but
so I gotta say, Trick. So I'm in a contest. It's actually in my area. Someone runs it, but it's through CBS Sports, and it's the prize for first last year was $70K. So it's for obviously it's no circa, but it's in my area, bunch of people my age do it, and you got to pick every single game ATS, right? And so a lot of times you want to try and stick out. So pick one you think people might not be on, but the numbers are interesting. My buddy and I, we're partners on it, right? And he just texted me, and he's a Pats fan. So he goes, "You make the call. I'm a Pats fan. The team's not good this year." And I'm the biggest Patriots hater of all, because a lot of people where I live in Nova Scotia in the eastern part of Canada, they're Patriots fans. I'm sure Freddie would probably agree with me. I'm sure he's got Patriots friends. Yeah, and so. But the funny thing is, I'm seeing 40.5 as a total. I want to bet under in every single Patriots game. It's all about time of possession, I think, and the defense for the Patriots. They're not going to score that many points. We all know that. So it's about how many. Trig, I ask you this because I'm not going to lie. My buddy and I said, "Fuck it, let's put the Patriots in," because there's going to be probably nobody else in this whole contest that puts the Patriots in. So that's kind of half the reason that we did that. But what's the score? How many points do the Bengals comfortably need to get to for you to think that they cover? Because how often are you going to get a +8 in a game where the total is 40.5? Are they thinking the Pats score 6 points? Or
I was going to say I wouldn't be surprised if the Pats score single digits here. Just what I'm hearing about what a horrific state the offensive line is in, and then knowing that they would have to go on the road and try to function in that stadium. Again, this is, I'm talking I don't want to sound super confident because this is not something that I bet, but it every once in a while, every year there's a team that ends up being the worst team in the league, where you look back to week 1 and week 2 and you were how is this team? The one that comes to mind is the Dolphins 5 years ago. I think they were a 7-point underdog against the Ravens week 1. And there was people making, there's sharp people making a case for Dolphins +7, and they lost by 50. And then they ended up it was the year that they were clearly the worst team in the league for the first 6 weeks of the season. I don't know. I still feel people want to hold on to the Pats a little bit because of what they've been for so long. Yeah. When I'm looking at it, I think they're going to be the worst. I think they're going to be far and away the worst team in football this year. So,
they're going to be awful. There's no denying that. There's no denying that.
If we're just talking numbers here, I thought if Chase was in, which I thought, did I see on my phone correctly? While we've been on air that he's in.
He's in, but T. Higgins is out, and everything that was coming out of Cincy all week is Chase will be on a pitch count. So I guess who knows once they get going, but
what the hell does that even mean in football? Like how are they gonna let him go out there, but only like limit? Like you're playing the game of football. Like you're
it's
still
got to
gonna.
be.
I
It's
would I
probably
would
because
think
he's not
maybe he
conditioned to
plays
play the full game
right. I
right
would
now.
think maybe he plays 2 series and maybe gets one off, or it's
Right.
definitely tough. I'm sure they have some sort of formula to figure it out, but definitely a tough sport to manage
See,
contact,
this
or
is the
particularly in that
perfect.
position.
This is like the perfect like for how I like kind of look at football, and I think Freddie kind of preaches this too. It's like those are the types of things I think get overblown a little bit, but then it gets swept under or it doesn't get any attention that the Browns might be without two very, very important offensive linemen. Like, I guess for me, like, I think like, yeah, like long term, you're not going to be able to live without like top guys. But remember, the Bengals have had a month to prepare for this game, all summer to prepare for this game. I think they'll probably like have a way to survive without T Higgins, and that's just kind of the way I look at it. Whereas when you talk about teams being down 3 offensive linemen, well, okay, like how do you live when that's the case? And then you talk about the Patriots and what I was hearing from some of the Boston guys I'm pals with, where the offensive line might be as bad as it's ever been, right? Like just like some of the things coming out there. How are the Patriots really moving the ball? And that would be my concern. So I lean Bengals, not something I bet.
I think Chase playing can be more of an effective kind of what would you call it? Almost a decoy. The Pats do have one really good corner in Christian Gonzalez. So even if he can kind of shadow Chase, I think that allows them Burrow to turn to some of the guys further down the depth chart. One of the guys that was getting a lot of attention. I follow the Bengals kind of closely just because they're a North team with the Steelers, but Andre Osivas, I think is the pronunciation. Looks like he'll step up today. He's the guy I plugged into my fantasy team because I felt like Chase will get Gonzalez, and I think Burrow will go to either Burton, who they just drafted, or Osivas, who's been getting kind of a lot of positive publicity from their camps, having a good kind of rapport with Burrow. So he'd be a sneaky guy today, I think, that nobody knows about because he hasn't got any run yet. I think he probably could have a big day, and I just can't trust Jacoby Brissett on the road. Maybe they can run the ball. The Bengals' kind of D line is pretty weak, but you mentioned there the O line is pretty bad. So it's I don't know, hard team to trust, but I do think sometimes the skill positioning stuff gets maybe a little bit overblown to what it means to the number versus guys in the trenches. If you have injuries in your offensive or defensive line, I just don't think the depth exists in those spots within organizations. And even if there's all kinds of communication meltdowns that happen that lead to blown assignments, that lead to turnovers, that lead to holding calls, false starts, all these types of things that stop drives. So I think they'll be fine today without Higgins personally. I don't think Chase really, I think him being out there can be more of a decoy and let some of the other guys that they have carry the load.
I don't know if we're getting Trig back or if that was how he was hopping out on us, Freddie. I think he'll probably come back to say goodbye. I'm not sure what he's got going on, but man, it's nice to do these videos. It's nice to be on. I like doing streams where, I mean, you want to have a direction you're going in, obviously, but you're kind of just hanging out, right? I'm sure you're the same. Like, I'm looking forward to the games. Pretty much, I'm going to sign off here in a few minutes. I'm taking my dog to a park like down the road from my house. I'm going to try and tire him out as much as I can and get ready to watch the games, maybe go get a bite to eat. But, I'm excited. And, Freddie, I think I always talk, everyone debates volume, right? Like you got your favorite picks, you got picks you like, and I can tell you like props as well. And I'm always looking at different props. The problem is that there's always going to be a game that you're watching and you're going to be like, damn it, I like this guy today, but I didn't bet his prop, or damn it, I like it. But you just can't live like that. It's so hard. It's hard not to, live like that just because, you want to be able to capitalize on some of these guys that you were looking at. But I feel like in the prop game, you kind of want to just pick a handful of the ones. So I did a video that I posted on my Instagram, TikTok, and on Twitter. And these were 3 props that I mentioned. Yes, all 3 of them are overs, guys, but they're different types of props. So Deontay Johnson receiving yards over 50.5. I do like Hubbard, so I feel like I'm all in on the Panthers, man. I like Johnson. I like Hubbard. I like the Panthers. 50.5. He had 63 yards in his last meeting against the Saints. I think he's the clear-cut number one guy, and they want to show that to him right away. And I feel like he's definitely going to get the targets, so the opportunities will be there. And for the talent level he has, I know that Trig was saying he worries a little bit about Bryce Young, but it wouldn't shock me to see him get halfway there in one pass. Right? If he gets a 20 or 25-yard catch, we catch that. So another one that I liked. Oh, by the way, I want to say, Freddie, I'm gonna give you full credit. I tailed you, and I made it a 1% play at Wager Talk with the Trevor Lawrence passing yards when you were saying there, and I was going over the numbers.
Like yep.
Yeah. So credit to you for that.
Johnson's a guy who I'm familiar with, spent his entire career in Pittsburgh. Getting separation has not been an issue for him. So I do think it makes a ton of sense for Young to kind of lean on him. That was a big issue for Carolina wide receivers last year. Thielen was more kind of your, kind of guy you could rely on third down, maybe sitting down in the zone, but he wasn't a guy that's going to take the top off a defense or separate from a corner. Johnson gives them a different dynamic. So yeah, I like that one. I think he kind of makes a splash in his debut there.
Let's go, man. It's so funny. Like, I'm not even joking. The game I'm probably going to be the most focused on in about an hour is that game.
Right. Yeah. And it's funny though, if you tend to be right about them, they may hold a little bit of value early in the season, just because everyone just remembers how awful they were. And people are kind of reluctant to change that mindset until a larger sample size. But as you mentioned there, sometimes the market inefficiencies are on the really bad teams improving slightly versus maybe a team that has always been good, trying to find value there because everybody knows that they have a good roster. So it's harder to find edges on those teams, I find.
I told a few buddies, and they were like, "What the hell are you doing? Telling me to bet that game?" Right? Like, they're like, what do you know? The other one I liked was Baker Mayfield over 21.5 pass completions. Washington was pretty much the bottom of the barrel in like every pass defensive statistic, but especially passing yards per game, 32nd last year. Baker went over this in 4 or 5 games to end last season. What I like about Baker the most, Freddie, is that he doesn't really, well, I shouldn't say he doesn't force things, but he has no issue dumping it off. Like, he's not really an ego quarterback, it seems like, which at one point he actually might have been, but he's kind of made a career now about just making the right choices. So he has no problem, like, marching the field with these dump offs. A lot of guys get yards after catch, and, like, he'll let them do the work, put the ball in their hands. And so when you've got guys like that, it's like I was saying to Trig earlier, like, guys like Mahomes, you'd be shocked, man. This guy goes under on his passing attempts quite a bit, because he has such a good arm that he doesn't need that many attempts to score for his team. So,
and the
Baker over 21.5, I like quite a bit.
I'm sure know that everyone wants to bet Mahomes over. And people log into their accounts. So sure, I'm definitely not taking Mahomes under. So they tax you probably 2-3 completions or probably 10 extra yards, just knowing that everyone's going to bet the over. We're not going to give anyone a discount. That's what I find. So I think you're right. Like, you end up having to pay a tax. So you're looking for other guys that, could be in chase situations where the team is down and, the volume is going to increase, or guys, like you said, who are maybe more lower average depth of target, kind of dink and dunking their way down the field versus, those explosive plays.
The third one was Kenneth Walker over 67.5 rushing yards. Denver, bottom 3 rushing defense in yards per game and yards per attempt last year. Seattle's one of the favorites I like today. I like a lot of underdogs. Seattle's a favorite I like today to get the job done. A lot of it's just me liking to bet against rookie QBs, and I think we love talking about stuff being baked into the number. I think everybody knows about these rookie quarterbacks, but I'm still willing to do it. And what's funny is I like a lot of +3.5s, +4s today. But then here I am taking a -6 or 5.5, depending on what number you're able to get. So, I think he's going to run the ball a lot. I think it helps out their pass game if he can establish the run.
Yeah, I like that one a lot. If you look last year, he's on my daily fantasy team too. Denver didn't really do a whole lot to add to the defense. They were bottom 5 in rush yards against, and I think second most fantasy points allowed to running backs per game. And as you mentioned, 6-point favorite. You'd expect them to probably play from ahead. And I'm pretty high on Mike McDonald, who they got from Baltimore. Again, kind of an AFC North thing, pretty familiar. I think Seahawks are going to be better than a lot of people give them credit for. And I think Tyler Lockett's maybe a little bit banged up, so would make a lot of sense to give Walker some extra touches. And if they build a double-digit lead, I mean, he's gonna being fed there in the second half. So I agree. I think that rush prop seems a little bit light.
I looked at the rushing attempts for him, but I think I was just more interested in the yards. 67.5. It's an okay number. I think the good thing about this is that he could break off for 1 or 2 good ones, and then if that happens, you kind of regret taking the attempts just because it doesn't matter how well they do on each run. You just need them to go. So yeah, those are a few that I like, man. Anything you want to throw out?
No, I think I mentioned most of the ones I had played already. The Pollard over 10.5 receiving yards, the Trevor Lawrence over 252.5. Can't really remember off the top of my head anymore, but those would be the 2 props I played. A lot of the other things I said were more so daily fantasy relevant guys who I had on my lineup for a certain reason. Like you said, it's hard to bet them all those props you like. So maybe I scratched that itch by putting them on like a DraftKings lineup and hope that they pay off that way.
I like it, man. Yeah, the DraftKings, the daily lineups are awesome. I love fantasy. It's awesome. And the daily fantasy stuff, too, is really good. Like I mentioned, the props, like I love the props so much, but it's so hard to follow along with all of them.
Right. And they all tend to be juiced, too, so you have to be careful. And, you can't bet 10 of them laying minus 120 every time. So that's what I struggle with, trying to find, like, what's my favorite? What do I think I have the most edge in here? And hope to God that they win and the other 8, don't, or something like that. Because it can be frustrating if you leave a few off and, they end up winning. But, that's the hard part about this is you try and make the best choices you can and hope the results are on your side long term.
That is a real good point about the juice there. It all adds up, minus 115, 120. If you go, even if you go 500, you're not having a great day. If you go a little bit above 500, you're still not really having a great day. You got to have a really good win clip if you're betting some juice on those. And it also pays to shop around a little bit on those. All right, we got Bruno in here saying Chase supposedly getting 20 to 30 snaps today. So we'll see what happens there with that one. The biggest key for these streams, guys, is for me, and I'm putting it out there in the world so you guys can hold me accountable, is consistency, especially once hockey season starts. I want to do these a lot. Freddie, I'd love for you to join me on some hockey talk in the future. But thanks for being here with me, Freddie. Guys, really appreciate everybody that tuned in. Again, if you're not following Freddie, if you're not following myself on socials, please check us out on X. And I know a lot of you guys are here on Twitter watching this, but if you can go over to my YouTube channel, McInnis Picks, hit the subscribe. Really helps me out with this. So, guys, best of luck. Enjoy week 1 in the NFL. We can't wait for it as well. Cash some tickets. We'll see you next time right here on the channel.